Hi guys, and welcome to your week 4 Modern World launch. And we are continuing our discussion of the Ideas That Change the World project. Again, with the pace chart that is found in the Google Classroom. If you haven't printed it or saved yourself a copy by now, I do recommend that. We are in week 4 this week, which runs from September 12th through Tuesday, September 18th. At this point, you should have tried to finish the Forms of Government focus area and at least be starting your preparation of the Enlightenment Philosophers focus area. And then we are moving on. I'm not going to discuss checkpoint 4 this week because I actually ended up taking out one of the checkpoints. So this project, we're not going to have a checkpoint 5. So the project actually has a little less to do than it did at the beginning. So I'd like you to still focus on checkpoints 1, 2, and 3. And then try to get these focus areas caught up as well. So the Ideas That Change the World project, the essential question that you're going to be answering in your final product is, how did the ideas of enlightenment lead to revolution? And we haven't discussed this yet, but how are the projects graded? So if you're new to the SLP, it is something a little different than you're used to. You want to first, whenever you're in your project view, you want to look for the little star icon, which is found below the checkpoints. So they typically go checkpoints 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a couple, 1 or 2 or 3 stars. The star icon indicates that that's a final product. So a final product is what you actually submit for a grade. So the checkpoints help you in the creation of the final product, and the final product with the star is what we grade. Whenever you are in this view for the final product, you will see for this project, the argumentative claim paragraph is the final product. That's the only thing you're submitting for this whole project. So when you think of a project, you're thinking something like really big that's going to take hours and hours and days and weeks and months, but really it's just a paragraph is all we're asking you to do. If you are somebody who would rather not write a paragraph, that's absolutely fine. You can give me a video essay if that's your preferred method, as long as you go about it in the way that, that you're focusing on these cognitive skills. Because the focus of this final product, this is what you're actually graded on, is what's called cognitive skills. So these ones are synthesizing multiple sources, argumentative claim, and selection of evidence. So there's also a rubric here. And when you click into that, you're going to open up, and it's going to show you, here's your cognitive skills, 1, 2, and 3. So for this paragraph, I will look at this and I will assess your ability to do these 3 things. You see grade 9 is what you guys are in. So you want to make sure your score falls between a 3.5 and a 5.5. Anything in that range, we consider grade level. Okay, so if you only got a 3, that's saying that you're not yet performing at a 9th grade level. So what you want to do is, if you need to get a 3.5 to show that you're on grade level with these 3 skills, I go to the rubric and I look at the 4. What is the criteria to earn a 4 for each of these 3 skills? So for argumentative claim, you would have your claims and subclaims are clearly introduced throughout the writing and organized so that relationships between the claims and subclaims are evident. If you write your paragraph and you think that you did enough in that way, you should probably receive a 4. For selection of evidence, you select relevant evidence that supports both the main claim and the subclaim. So if you think you did that, you'll likely earn a 4. And for synthesizing multiple sources, to get a 4, it would say that connections among the sources are made by comparing information from multiple sources and or comparing the type of sources. So again, use this thing because this is exactly what we use to score your projects. If you want to, I recommend aiming even higher, because if you aim for a 5 and you don't quite get there, you're likely going to be at a 4.5 or a 4, which is still good for your grade level. So cognitive skills are what we grade the projects on. So for this one, again, it's synthesizing multiple sources, argumentative claim, and selection of evidence. So for this week, I want to look into synthesizing multiple sources. What does that mean? So basically, why is it important to consult multiple sources of information? This can be in school or life. It's important to not always rely on one source or one person or one document as your evidence for something. It's important to, if you see a document or you read a newspaper article or you hear a story on social media, that you also go somewhere else and look to verify that and back it up with some facts. So the importance of synthesizing multiple sources is that you're not just putting all your eggs in one basket. You're able to look at both sides of the spectrum or get multiple stories from multiple viewpoints. So it's important to do that in school and in life. So how do you synthesize multiple sources? There's 5 steps you can follow. The first one, you want to come up with your claim in response to the prompt or the historical question. So when you go into your checkpoint and it comes up and it says historical question, how did the Enlightenment philosophers encourage people to revolt, or whatever the question is? Your answer to that question is your claim. Okay, so that's the first thing you should do. Come up with your claim. Then you're going to introduce your first document. You want to say, what is the name of the document? So don't say in source A, because you want to pretend that you have outside readers reading this, that anybody in the world could pick this up and know exactly what you're talking about. And they're not going to know what source A is or document A is if you don't tell them that. So look into the document. What is document A, or what is source A? Who's the author? What was the date it was created? So even if that's just a year. And then also, what was the main idea or a quote that you took away from that also helps you support your claim. Then you want to introduce your second document. Same things, the name of the document, the author, the date created, your main idea or quote, because you are required to have at least 2 pieces of evidence from 2 different sources for this project. Your fourth one, you want to discuss the similarities or the differences between the 2 documents. You could discuss both the similarities and the differences, but you need to make sure to synthesize means to look at 2 things and compare and contrast them, basically. So discuss the similarities or the differences between the 2 documents. And then you want to end it by explaining how those similarities or differences support your claim. So what you're going to do, something similar, whenever you're answering your final thing, you kind of want to follow a pattern like this to show that you can synthesize. Enlightenment writers described ways to make society better by changing blank and blank, so that your answer to that would be your claim. For example, blank, which philosopher? Blank wrote, and then what did they say? Include the quote. This evidence shows blank, so that's you explaining how that supports your claim. In addition, blank wrote, so this is where you bring in your second philosopher and your additional quote. Both of these quotes show that, and that's your part where it's prompting you to synthesize. So refer back to this, because if you can do this and lay this out in this kind of format, you're going to get a good grade for synthesizing multiple sources. I want to go into a little bit more detail about mastering focus areas, because I do think we have, especially some newer learners who are struggling with what to do in a focus area. If your progress page, if this is what you do on a given day, so look, this is one day, Thursday, August 30th, taking that many diagnostic tests and taking the same one 5, 6, 7, 8 times, that's really of no benefit to you guys, okay? So I want to make sure we're doing the right process. You want to try to take the diagnostic 1 time. I do know people who want to take it 2 or 3 times. They like to see the different questions they get. If that's part of your studying style, go ahead and do that. But I think, this 7, 8 times is excessive. So it's a pre-test. So make sure you're not going and devoting too much time to that. Then you want to analyze the data that you get from the diagnostic to create your study plan. So it's going to tell you got 5 out of 7 questions correct. Then it breaks it down and it tells you for each objective how many you got right. Okay, so you want to create your plan based on that. If you got 0 out of 3 right on one of the objectives, then you want to focus your time on that objective. Whereas if you got 3 out of 3 right on some objective, you might not even have to study that because you probably know it. So you want to look at which objectives do you need to spend more time learning, and then you want to study the playlist of resources under each objective. So there's a couple objectives listed. You have to click into that to actually open up a list of resources. Again, you don't have to look at all of them, but looking at a few videos or reading an article or something that's going to help you learn. So learn the way that you like to learn. Then when you feel prepared, you can request the content assessment at the bottom of the screen. So the content assessments at the bottom, that is actually what gets scored, that you need an 8 out of 10 to consider that mastered, and it'll turn it green. They don't get unlocked right away. We unlock throughout the day between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. So most days, nothing's going to get unlocked after 4 p.m. So plan accordingly. You should know this by now. If you would like to go home and work or work over the weekend, make sure that you're in there before Friday at 4 p.m. requesting some content assessments for you to work on over the weekend. And for those of you, I know some of you are like, well, when you don't unlock them, I have nothing to do in the evening. That's not true. Are you caught up on your launches? You could be studying the playlist, maybe not taking the exam or the assessment, but you could at least be studying. And there's also a lot of you who are saying that have not yet submitted a checkpoint. So you can work on your checkpoints at any time. So that's what I recommend doing in the evening. But it's up to you guys to plan accordingly, okay? Because typical business hours are between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. and things just aren't going to open up for you in the evening just because you weren't prepared during the day. So if you're to a point you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore, what am I supposed to do? For next Tuesday, you should have already mastered the forms of government content assessment. If you haven't, that should be your number one priority, because that's where you're really going to learn some information about government that you can then apply to the project. Because really the project is about Enlightenment philosophers who were upset with the current state of affairs and how their government was treating them. And they were trying to warn the people, like, this is what government should really be. So study the government one, master that one, and then you should start preparing for or attempting the Enlightenment philosophers content assessment. The two of those are very, very necessary to complete the project. It's going to make everything much more clear for you if you do both of those. You should also try to submit checkpoint 1, 2, and 3 of the project for feedback. So we're going to pump the brakes on the project right now until we kind of get caught up. We'll get it back into checkpoint 4 probably next week. But this is your opportunity to get caught up on these checkpoints. Not only do you want to submit the checkpoints, but you want to make sure that you review my feedback. So I try to give you feedback on everything you submit. Look at what I'm asking you to do, look at my recommendations or suggestions, make those changes, and then resubmit it so that you can turn that green, because the more checkpoints that you have turned green, the better your final product is going to be. All right, so if you guys need anything throughout the week, anything that you need cleared up, please send me a Hangout. I have no problem creating little videos for you to clear some things up. But if you're somebody that's just stuck, you can't afford to just sit there and not ask for help. So you got to figure out how you're going to get this done. There's a lot of people here that want to help you. You just have to ask.